I'm officially back in the office full time after taking a 5 month sabbatical from work. And today I'm going to be sharing details about my sabbatical and lessons learned along the way. Hi, I'm Scarlett Cochran, and this is One Big Happy Life, where we help you find balance, build wealth, and live happy. Everything that you need to create the life that you want. This is the first in a series of videos that I'm going to be doing, sharing all about my sabbatical experience and sharing tips that you can use to plan your own sabbatical. So, today I'm going to be talking about lessons that I learned during my sabbatical. I'll also be sharing a video on how to take a sabbatical, including how to financially prepare for a sabbatical and how to best use that time when you do take your sabbatical. And then I'm also going to be specifically talking about how to take a sabbatical when you run your own company, which I do. I also want to invite you to a brand new live masterclass that I'm teaching, the first that I've taught in 5 months, all about how to design a life that you love. We all want to live happier, more fulfilling, meaningful lives. We all want to get to the end of our lives and look back on the life that we lived and think, wow, I really lived that life. But it's so easy to get caught up in the default life, the life that we think that we're supposed to be living, or the life that we think that we have to live because of choices that we've made in the past, even though those choices aren't serving us anymore. So that's what we're going to be breaking through in this new live masterclass. It's all about designing the life that you want to live now, a life that is exciting and lights you up, and a life that you will be thrilled to look back on. So head on over to onebighappylife.com/dream life to register and save your seat for this live masterclass. Okay, so now let's dive into the lessons that I learned while taking this 5 month sabbatical. And I suppose that the best place to start is by answering the question, why did I take a sabbatical in the first place? Like, what was the purpose of the sabbatical? And I'm going to dive into the different types of sabbaticals in the next video where I talk about how to take a sabbatical. But I will say that for me, taking a sabbatical was about rest. It was about recharging. It was about enjoying and savoring my life and taking the time to do that. And it was also about designing the next phase of my life and giving myself space and time to think about what I actually want my life to look like going forward. What do I want my work to look like? How do I want to spend my time? What do I truly value? And these are important questions that we need to ask ourselves on a regular basis because those answers will change over time as we hit different phases of our lives. And I have found for myself and for many of the people that I've coached that we go through life phases that can last anywhere from 3 to 5 years. So we're actually continually reinventing ourselves if we allow ourselves to every 3 to 5 years because we have all these new life experiences and we kind of become a different person, right? We're always growing as we're going through our life journey. We're not the same person that we were 3 or 5 years ago, and for many of us, even a year ago, because of the life experiences that we have. And if we don't take the time to stop and listen to our inner compass, to listen to that voice inside of us that tells us whether we are on track, whether we're feeling good about the life that we're living, it's really easy to just get caught in the current and end up living this default life that doesn't actually match up with the life that we want. So we find ourselves very successful, accomplishing all the things, but asking the question, well, is this all there is? And so the way that we avoid that is by making sure that we're paying attention, we're asking ourselves these questions. And so I spent 5 months really asking myself that question basically every single day. So now that I've shared why I took the sabbatical, now let's talk about some of the lessons that I learned during my 5 month sabbatical. The first lesson that I learned is that sabbaticals don't have to be productive. So before taking my own sabbatical, the only knowledge that I had about sabbaticals were professors and researchers who would take sabbaticals to work on a project or publish a book or write a paper. So to me, before this experience, a sabbatical was something that you did to work specifically on a project that would lead to some end result, some tangible thing at the end of your sabbatical. But in taking my own sabbatical, I discovered that a sabbatical doesn't have to be about doing other different kinds of work. A sabbatical can be entirely unproductive. It can be about exploration, it can be about travel, or it can be, like it was for me, about just staying home and living my regular life just without work. It can be about clearing your calendar and not being scheduled and instead just letting your days unfold however they unfold on any given day, which is exactly what I did. I had no set wake up time. I had no big projects that I was working on. In fact, projects that I started before my sabbatical, like our backyard garden, I didn't make much progress on just about anything over the course of those 5 months. And that was a perfectly wonderful use of that time. That was exactly what I needed. Really, for the first time in my life, I enjoyed a long span of unstructured time. So, no, a sabbatical does not have to be productive. It doesn't have to involve drastically changing absolutely everything about your life to go backpacking across Europe and Asia to find yourself. A sabbatical can be very much about staying at home, enjoying your life, focusing on rest, rejuvenation, leisure, and joy, which is what mine was. The next lesson I learned is that sabbaticals do not have to be all or nothing. So you can take a sabbatical without completely quitting working entirely. And that's what I did. I took a sabbatical, but I still did some work. I just reduced my workload dramatically. In fact, the only things that I kept on my calendar were my live coaching calls. So I have coaching calls inside of Wealth Builder Society that are ongoing. I do coaching calls every single month. And I also have a small number of private business coaching clients that I continued to coach while I was on sabbatical. So that amounted to about 3 hours a week of work. So not zero, but certainly a far cry from a full 40-hour week. And coaching is one of the things that I enjoy the most about the work that I do. So I was happy to continue to do that. But work that I did not do, so I did not create any new free content out on YouTube or in social media. I didn't write any blog posts. I didn't do any podcast interviews, any inbound things. Like we said no, because I'm on sabbatical. I also didn't create any new programs or products. I didn't even do much in the way of writing for work, like thinking about programs or products, which is something that I would normally do. I didn't do any of that because I really wanted to step out of the day-to-day like working in my business to really think about, okay, what is the next stage for me in life and in work? What kind of work do I want to be doing? What kinds of questions am I really excited to be asking myself and to be solving for others? It was really fun, but also challenging to step into this idea of the best way of moving forward is with stillness, with doing nothing, and just listening to what was coming up for me during that time. That I could actually make those decisions about what was next in my life by just enjoying my life. And so that was a really fun and unusual and for the first time experience for me, and I highly recommend it. The next lesson I learned was about releasing expectations. So both other people's expectations of me and my own expectations of myself. Now, when I decided to go on this sabbatical, I just made the decision and I did it. I didn't make a big announcement to the world. No one really knew what I was doing except for, my family, Joseph, Alexis Reeves. I told them about it. And any friends and family that asked me, hey, how are things going? I would say, yeah, I'm on a sabbatical. But I did not make this huge announcement to the world. And I had to manage my own thoughts around that. The first of which being, why did I feel like I needed to make an announcement to the world? And part of it is the expectation that, well, other people would expect me to tell them what it is I'm doing. And so I should do that, because if I don't do that, then people are going to think the worst, right? You see, this is all about stories and shoulds, right? My thought that I need to manage what other people are thinking about the fact that I'm not there, and not just being okay with the, well, so what if they think something's wrong? It's okay. It took me a while to be okay with that. And it was interesting because when I came back, so I went 5 months without looking at social media, looking at email. So I came back and logged onto Instagram for the first time. And I saw all these messages like, hey, where have you been? Some were like, we miss you. Hope you're enjoying yourself, whatever you're doing. But the majority of them were, are you okay? I hope everything's okay. And instantly I started to feel like, oh my gosh, I should have made that announcement, right? This is 5 months after I've been working on releasing this expectation. And I had to recenter myself to say, no, I don't know why the inclination seems to be for the majority of people to think that something went wrong or something must be wrong, versus just saying, hey, what you been up to? And not assuming the worst. But I can let others assume the worst and not feel the need to correct or control the narrative. So that was a really interesting exercise for me, because that is something that I really have always done. I'm a person that doesn't want to upset anyone, doesn't want to hurt people's feelings, also wants to make sure that people understand what's actually happening. I hate this idea of misconceptions being spread. And so it was really good for me to learn through this sabbatical that I can release those expectations, my own expectations of what I feel like I need to do in any given circumstance, and also other people's expectations of what they think that I should be doing in any given circumstance. So that was a really powerful exercise. Even the idea of taking a sabbatical, and taking a sabbatical where there was no project that I could produce at the end to say, look, I took a sabbatical to write my book, or I took a sabbatical to go soul searching and, teaching surfing out in California or something like that. It's like I took a sabbatical and I just kind of like woke up whenever I wanted to, puttered out to the garden. I picked up tennis, so I would go out and play tennis in the middle of the day. I would just hang out with my family. I would be there when Reeves came home from school and we would just hang out in the evenings. I watched a lot of television and that was my sabbatical. And sabbaticals can look like that too, and be just as good and right and effective and useful towards furthering the life that we actually want. So releasing expectations, such an important lesson. And I'm so glad that I got to learn it as part of taking the sabbatical. All right, next lesson, which I just touched on, just because you have more time does not mean you become a completely different person. So I took this 5-month sabbatical. Did that mean that suddenly I'm exercising every day, I'm cooking and eating all the healthy foods, I'm reading again, I'm doing all these things that in my mind, I tell myself I would do if I had more time? And the answer was no. I didn't exercise anymore during that time. I wasn't eating. Well, actually, I'm going to take that back. I did exercise, but only because I picked up tennis. It's not like I started running or weight training or any of that. I picked up tennis as a hobby. So I'd been playing a lot of tennis, but I didn't lose any weight. My eating habits didn't change. In fact, I probably started eating more because I was playing so much tennis. I was really hungry. And so the moral of this story is, just because you have more time doesn't mean you're going to start doing all the things that you think that you would do if you had more time. Bottom line is, the process of changing your behavior, changing your default habits, doesn't become any more automatic or easier just because you have more time. It still takes the same amount of effort. You still have the same amount of resistance, right? Because we're living the way we are. We have these default habits for a reason. They serve us for a reason. So changing from what we're doing now to what we want to be doing is still going to be a whole process, no matter how much time we have. So the moral of that story is that the lack of time thing is truly just an excuse that we give to ourselves that keeps us stuck. And while this is something that I know and something that I've taught, I have to say that it hit differently when suddenly, for the first time in my life, I had tons of time. I had no demands on my day except for the ones that I decided I wanted to do. And I still didn't do all the things that I thought that I would do. But that's not to say that nothing changed, because there are things that did change about the way that I was living my life while I was on sabbatical. One big change was that I wasn't on social media at all. So normally, running One Big Happy Life, I'm creating content. I'm creating content on YouTube, I'm creating content on Instagram, I'm writing emails, and I am a habitual checker. So I will check things even though I'm not supposed to, even though I have like a team member who that's their job, especially on Instagram. I would frequently check it and respond to comments. And for the first time in years, I didn't do that. And I found that I had no real urge to be on social media or share any aspects of my life. And I enjoyed just enjoying my life. And if I was taking pictures of things that were going on in my life, things that we did, because we did still do things, we went on vacations, we traveled, we had experiences, but the photos were taken with the lens of, I want to remember this for my family. This is going to be a great memory versus, oh, how's this going to look on the gram? Let me show people what I'm doing. And just that different sentiment and approach to the recording of my life, it felt different and I enjoyed it so much more. And so for that reason, I'm coming off of sabbatical feeling a bit of a conflict, feeling the urge to not go back to creating content about my life specifically, feeling the urge to have a more private life where I just get to enjoy it, and then feeling the conflict in knowing that the purpose of sharing my life is to help inspire other people to go after the life that they want. So sharing my life has a purpose, but I truly enjoyed not sharing it. So conflict unresolved. I'm sure you're going to hear me talk about this as time goes on. When I make a final decision on what exactly that looks like, I'm sure I'm going to talk about it in a future video. But yeah, I really enjoyed zero social media for 5 months. It's been amazing. And I didn't even have the urge to post updates to family and friends on Facebook or anything like that. It's like if they wanted an update, they could message me or I'd call them, the old fashioned way. And that was nice. I also made a whole bunch of new friends, like a whole host of new friends, to the point where I was able to throw a surprise party with Joseph and had a whole bunch of guests, none of whom we had known before we moved to Charlotte a year ago. And that's been wonderful. I've always wanted to have an active adult social life. And now I have that. I have random people that will text me to say, hey, what are you doing? Do you want to do something this weekend? What are you up to? And I'm really glad that I have that now. And if you had asked me a year ago if that would be my social life today, I would have probably told you no, because it's not something that I've had since law school, since that time when there's all these people with a shared goal kind of living near each other, taking classes together. And so it's easier to get to know people. And so it's been a long time. And I'm glad that we have found our way to this place to where we have the friends and the social life that we wanted. I also picked up new hobbies. So I learned how to play cello. I also quit the cello. So I played for about 3 months, learned how to play hot cross buns, and decided cello was not for me. I learned how to garden. I also learned that gardening is much harder than the gardening YouTubers make it seem. It's like you're constantly fighting weeds and fighting wildlife. But we still got really great harvest. So I enjoyed it. We're going to do it again. And I learned how to play tennis. And that is like my new just I'm fully in it hobby, to the point where we even took a tennis vacation with some new tennis friends that we made. Yes, that is a thing. Tennis vacations are like this luxury resort thing because it's luxury resorts that actually have tennis courts, but it's fun. And it's something that I want to make sure to include in my life from now on. Every single year, I want to take at least one tennis vacation. So a lot of things did change, but many things still stayed the same. And yes, having more time to devote to those things like hobbies and tennis, that did help make those things happen. But I also found that those things happened because I made the decision that I was going to do something differently. I made the decision that I wanted to be more social. I made the decision that I wanted to learn how to play tennis. So instead of sitting down and watching TV at 6 p.m. in the evenings because I would tell myself, well, I'm tired. Now the whole family will get up and we'll go out and we're playing tennis at 6 p.m., 7 p.m., Saturday, first thing in the morning, when I would have normally told myself, well, I've got to do these other things. And so even though I'm now back at work, this new way that I spend my time with friends, playing tennis, doing gardening, those things are still there. I just make time for them and I make less time for the things that I used to do that don't matter. So I don't watch as much television. I'm still not on social media very much. And so it's really less about having a whole bunch of time and more about being really selective about how you spend your time. All right, so I've got two more lessons to share with you. The first is that I really enjoy my work and I want to work. And this was a question that I did ask myself because I think that it's important that we never just assume that because we're doing something that we want to keep doing that thing. I love this exercise called the dropping the balls exercise, where you release all of the roles that you have in your life. And it's like you're a blank slate. And so then you choose which roles to take back on, right? So that includes releasing the role of mother, releasing the role of wife, releasing the role of entrepreneur, lawyer, author, releasing all of those things and only picking back up the things that truly bring meaning to your life. And so for me, family, I love my family. So certainly mother, wife, that's going to be two of the first balls that I pick back up. And then work for my whole life, my whole adult life has been very meaningful to me. But I had to ask myself the question, I think it's important that I ask myself the question, do I even want to work? You know, what if I was just a housewife? What if I just stopped working? How would I feel about that? And throughout the whole sabbatical, that never really sat well with me, like for me. I know that I enjoy working, but I also know that there were parts of the way that I was working that I didn't enjoy as much. And I wanted to make sure that I spent time exploring, okay, well, what did I like about work and what didn't I like about work? And I already talked about social media being one of the things that I'm not excited about coming back to, and I'm not sure that I will come back to. And if I do come back to it, it's not going to look the way that it did before. Also, I had to admit to myself that part of the reason why I like working is because I like the lifestyle that I can afford when I work. I don't, sure, we could go down to a single income, and that would certainly change a lot about the way that we live and the way that we spend. And I don't want those things to change. And I can decide that I value these things that we're able to do in our lives, like travel, international travel, eating out, tipping well, supporting sustainability and companies that have sustainable products, companies that pay fair wages. Like those things all cost money. And I want to be able to spend in that way. And so work funds something very valuable to me. And so I'm not willing to let those things go. And so I'm not willing to let work go. But that doesn't mean that I'm willing to settle for any kind of work. I believe in a yes and, right? I can work and I can also have a really flexible schedule that allows me to enjoy my life, allows me to play tennis in the middle of the day if that's what I choose to continue doing, allows me to have meaningful work, allows me to create products and courses and coaching for growth-minded people who want to live the fullest, biggest, most extraordinary lives that they can. And I can do both things. I just have to make the decision that this is what I want. Because if we don't make the decision, it's very easy to settle for the default life, to settle for what we've been doing, to settle for things that we don't actually want and would never choose again if offered the choice today. So the final lesson that I want to share is that just because I was on sabbatical and not working and savoring my life does not mean that my life stopped having problems. I think that we too frequently get caught up in these sort of like perfectionist, I'll be happy when in the future fantasies where we tell ourselves, oh, I'll go on sabbatical and I won't have any hassles to deal with. There were still hassles. There were still problems. Life was still happening. So the kids were out together, Reeves and Alexis, and they got T-boned by another car. And thankfully, they're fine, but it could have been much, much worse. We had an experience where Reeves got locked and left in an empty school bus because he fell asleep on the bus, and the bus driver drove off with him in the bus and parked the bus and left the bus. So that was nerve-wracking, trying to figure out where Reeves even was and getting to him before anything bad happened to him. Medical issues have come up. I got COVID for the first time. The point is that life is gonna life regardless of what's happening around you. And so it's important to recognize that going on a sabbatical, taking a break, stepping away from work will not completely eliminate all of the issues that can come up in life because life is entirely random at times. And so as you're working towards creating a happy life, whatever a happy life looks like for you, just understand that a happy life includes both the good and the bad. The ebbs and the flows are a normal part and a natural part and an inevitable part of human existence, right? We're going to have ups and downs no matter what. So as we're designing lives that we love, make sure to include the space for all of the aspects of life versus planning for a perfect but unrealistic future. And if you want to learn more about designing a life that you truly love, then be sure to sign up for my live masterclass by heading over to onebighappylife.com/dream life. All right, I'll see you next time.